Public budget hearing and special town meeting is called to order. First item on the agenda is the proposed budget is presented to the electors by the chairman, Arnie Nystrom, and town board members. First item we're going to discuss is the budget that was presented in the paper, where the proposed revenues for this year is $2,789,531, where last year we took in revenues of $3,411,775, which is a decrease of revenue of 16.3%. Now, to keep the budget balanced, we had to do the same thing. Instead of budgeting for $3,004,000, we had to budget for $2,789,531, which is a 16.3% decrease. We've taken some of our reserve funds, reduced our reserve funds from $805,000 to now projected to be $675,000. So you have the budget revenues and the expenditures documents in front of you. If you wish to speak to the item, any particular items, just to raise your hand, I'll call on you and you may speak to it. When it does come to voting, I'm not sure if there's any folks here that are not residents and eligible electors from the town, but if you are not an eligible elector to vote, then you cannot vote on the budget. So, Judy?
And an elector for the town must live in the town, not just a property owner. You have to live in the town, be eligible to vote in a regular election. So is there anyone here that is not an elector for the town?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
You may speak to any budget items, but when it comes to voting, we ask you to refrain then. All right, does any board members want to talk on any objects, or should we open it right up to the folks on the floor? You see the numbers in front of you. Judy, do you want to elaborate on anything?
Well, these are our total line items that are in our accounting system that we use. Looking at the spreadsheet, you can see the actual 2011, 2012 numbers. The center part of the spreadsheet is 2013, and this was done at the end of August, and due to our budget meetings, it hasn't, been updated since then. It's an year-to-date through August. Then the October to December numbers are roughly guesses. Some of them that are reoccurring expenses are calculated taking, the year-to-date, dividing it by the number of months, multiplying out, for the rest of the year. Some of them are guesses, some of them are, I guess that unfortunately that's what a budget is guesses. Which gave us our end of the year estimate, which reflects in the numbers that Arnie read, saying that our general fund will be being used this year. Then you got the column, which is the 2013, our budgeted numbers. The over and under the budget of where we're expected to be. The 2014 budget numbers as the board is presenting to you, and then the change in the percentage of the budget. One of the items, looking back at that first page that Arnie was referring to, if you notice in 2013, the miscellaneous revenues are $718,000. That $718,000 is the $500,000 that was borrowed on a 5-year loan for Town Line, along with a $211,000 one-year loan, which will be paid back in 2014. That was also for Town Line Road project. Now, if you look on the 2014 proposed budget, you'll notice that there's a big jump in the revenue of the intergovernmental revenues up to 808. That is $316,000 that the town will be receiving back. It was a state grant for doing Town Line Road. But because of between the 2 years, it ended up in 2 different years on the budget. We won't be receiving that 316 back till next year, even though we spent the money for Town Line this year. So I guess if anybody's got questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
Any board members want to comment, or?
Mr. Chairman, my only comment that I want to make as we're looking at it is that the board worked, it wasn't an easy decision to try and figure out what services, what programs, what capital outlay requests that were made, which of those stayed in the budget and which of those were cut from the budget. So there were several requests that were made of the board that are not included in the budget. And the reason they're not included is because the board is presenting a budget to you that is nearly equal to what the town tax levy was last year. However, there is an allowable amount of town tax levy that could be collected above and beyond of what is being presented today. And I just want to put that out there as food for thought so people understood how the tax levy from year to year is set, and that becomes your new tax levy, with exception to a calculation that Judy can explain later if anyone wants to understand of how unused tax levy could eventually become lost opportunity of programs that might have been cut this year. There's more than $100,000 of items that were not put into the budget that could have been considered. And there were cuts that were done over previous years. We've reduced hours of staff, of our office staff. We had reduced some hours for a while of public works. We've lost some public works employees. There are different types of places that if we were to collect what's allowed to be collected, those are some of the things that could be considered.
And just for a little bit clarification of what Kathy is saying, right now the budget that's being proposed is, tax-wise, is a collection of $1,335,083. That is a little over almost $59,000 under what we are allowed to collect. Right now, the tax levy limit is set at 0%, and a very small percentage of the net new construction. So the tax levy that could be collected is almost $59,000 more than what the board is presenting tonight.
Now, we present that to you so that you do realize that the board is trying to work as tightly we can to the constraints of the budget. And when I first sat down with everybody in the budget hearing, I said my goal is to present a budget that is as close to the last year's budget as we can. Obviously, we don't have the controls of what other taxing entities such as the school districts or wherever do. We can control the little piece that the town is. So what we're proposing is a tax levy that would equalize value to the tax rate would be $1.87 versus the $1.86. $2.87, excuse me, against $2.86, which really is $1 more on every $100,000 value home. So in minuscule things, that's 0.063 or something % increase. So we're asking for just a small increase. Yes, there is more money that the state would allow us to go to if someone felt the need and asked us to do that, but it is not a requirement. I think Jeannie over there, did you have
I do
comment?
have a couple of questions, Ernie. And I don't mean to put the board on the spot, but I have, first I'll clarify. By looking through the budget and having been involved in the process before, I can tell that there is no fat in this budget. And my concern is that there were probably lots of requests made that I'm not aware of that were refused because of the fact the board was being conscientious and trying to keep it down. My question is, why don't we take advantage of the levy as it's presented? We don't have to take the full amount, but why don't we compromise and take part so we have a contingency? One of the things that I've learned from the people that I've talked to in our community, they don't want to lose the services they have. And if we have an emergency come up, we won't have the money. Second, we found in recruiting a police chief, if we're not comparable in our salaries with other communities close by, we're not going to have the staff and the qualified staff that we need to run the town. So yes, we can cut, and we can cut, and we can cut, but the more we cut each year, in the end, it's going to be a big jump because we're going to have to make a big jump to survive. So my questions are, why didn't we take advantage of coming up a little more? And what do we have to lose by not doing it, from your perspective?
From
And
my
be honest.
perspective, I said in my campaign when I said I was run for chairman, and some of you may know that I've been on this board with Tom since way back in 1995. And through all those years, we maintained a very tight budget. We chose to use some reserves that we had built up over the years because we didn't spend the full budget. We always said, and Chris will probably reiterate this, that we wanted to keep a $500,000 reserve budget because we don't receive most of our funding from the state for shared revenue or road payments until late in the year. So if we did not have the reserve, we'd have to be borrowing money, which is not a good way to do business. So we found that the magic number is around $500,000 to operate on. So the budget got up to pretty close to 800,000 surplus now. So I said, I think this is the time to take a little of that out of there and take it back down, simply because we did a huge project with that Town Line Road, and some of the funding is going to help pay some of those loans off that we have. Yes, we can go up. We can go up to roughly 301 for the allowable state rate. But personally, I'm not asking for that. Some of the other board members would like something in the middle. So in reality, it's up to you folks eventually. So we'd like to hear some more comments, particularly anything, other items. Otherwise, we'll get into the nuts and bolts of this thing after we go through the hearing part of it. So any discussions? Yes, go ahead. Mr. Head.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name's Ron Head. I'd like to share a few perceptions, probably with the audience, because the lady board has heard these before. I've been to these board meetings, these budget meetings for 4 or 5 years now. And the meeting we're at tonight, there's one of those a year, but there's like 5 or 6 or 7 meetings that preface this thing. And that's where the nuts and bolts happen. That's where the budget is really developed. And I got to say that, these guys, and I don't mean just these guys here, but I mean all the boards that I've watched so far, boy, they're really frugal. They really struggle with the status quo versus moving ahead versus maybe falling a little bit behind. I'm kind of in Jeannie's boat over here that, I guess I'm lucky. I can afford. I think Grand Rapids is a cheap place to live. We got $140,000 assessed value on our house. It costs us $400 for Grand Rapids taxes. Costs us $115 just for them to come pick up the garbage. So the $400 taxes, I think, is I'm okay with that. I know a lot of people probably aren't, but I'm pretty comfortable with it. I like what Jeannie said about, and I don't quite understand how it works, but I'm kind of proactive in my thoughts of moving the township ahead, and I'm willing to pay a little bit more for something that I perceive might move the township ahead. When these guys developed the budget, Arnie says the revenues decreased 16.3%. They developed a budget that was 16.3% less. I heard Arnie say that he was comfortable with the mill rate going up he'd like to keep it, I don't think I'm taking you out of context here, he'd like to keep the mill rate at least stay the same, or maybe go down a little bit, but he didn't want it to go up more than 1 mil, you know. Just kind of to put this budget in perspective, if we're talking about a $10,000 change in the budget, if we want to increase or decrease, if we want that budget to change by $10,000 on a $100,000 assessed property, that cost you $2, not cost, but that's a change of $2 a year. Not a week, not a month, it's a year. You change the budget by $10,000 for a $100,000 assessment, it changes your tax in Grand Rapids by $2 a year. Not all, you know, it really kind of brings it home. There's another document in your book, in your handout there, that Grand Rapids is $287 a thousand. Mid-State is $173. You know, I think I get a lot more value from Grand Rapids than I do from Mid-State. You know? That's kind of where I'm going. Wood County is $504. State is 17 cents. I can't even put that in perspective. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for your comments, your kind comments. Anybody else wish to speak on any items on the budget? Yeah, Shirley?
Yeah, well, I guess I have a different perspective. We have a lot of senior citizens in this area, and you say, oh, yeah, it only goes up so much, you know, we probably can afford that. But when you add the total up there, you have the school taxes going up, you have senior citizens trying to stay in their homes, okay? So maybe a couple bucks or whatever doesn't matter to, you know, to some people, but to others, it might make the difference of whether they stay in their homes or they don't stay in their homes. And I think the board has set this at 287, they went through it, and that is what they're proposing. And they have felt, you know, that it needed to be higher, then that's what they should have done. They're the ones that went through and set the budgets for the different departments, and this is the rate, and I feel that this is the rate that we should agree with and pass tonight.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Kathy.
I'd like to be on the record of, Arnie was correct when he commented earlier that it isn't, let me think of how I'm going to say this. I'm not one for raising taxes. I'm not one for being out there and advocating that we should be increasing taxes. However, I'm also not one to be irresponsible in thinking long-term what that means to the town. And if it means raising the taxes $2 on your home or $4 on your home so that we think long-term, when you commented, Shirley, that the board did come to this, we agreed to disagree at times because, you know, not every item in here was unanimously, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone over there, was agreed to. I do agree with some of the comments that have been made out there that it doesn't hurt to think about the services that have been cut over the last several years because budgets were tight and we did not have the opportunity to collect that tax. We only are allowed to collect so much in taxes each year, and then that becomes your new amount next year. So all I would like to come out or go on the record and say is that I think you need to look long-term. There was an individual, when I was clerk, which was many years ago, there was an individual who once said, we should collect more than what we were because they're going to put a freeze on our government taxes and what we can collect. And the board at that time looked at that individual and said, no, why? And that individual's smiling at me right now. But we did not collect more taxes in spite of that. And there were several years that we struggled to make the budgets balance. And we cut off the staff because of it. We've lost positions because of it. We haven't given raises to staff because of it. And I think a lot of those items could be considered today if we consider what is allowable. I'm not saying that you have to go to the max. I'm not encouraging anyone to do that. I'm just asking you to think long-term, not just next year, because that will be your new amount.
Thank you.
Excuse me, you're telling me that staff hasn't, what was the last raise that they, the percentage that they got? 2%?
Some staff get raises, some have not. 2 years ago, there were staff individuals who did not get any raise. It was a 0% increase.
I still say if the budget gets that tight, or if the town runs out of money or whatever, that it can be presented to the town citizens at the next budget, and then it can be raised or whatever. Why do we want to raise something if we don't need to right now?
You can only
Because it just
collect what's
is-
allowed,
Well-
Shirley.
Well,
Need to address the chair, please. That's who we want everybody to address.
well, she was addressing me.
I know, and I'm talking to her too.
Okay.
Kathy,
Mr. Chairman?
you may speak.
You can only collect what's allowed. You can't sit here and say, well, we ran out of money, let's raise taxes. We can't do that. That's not how it works. We can only approve, make a motion and approve and collect what is allowed. So that's my point, Shirley. It's not that,
Well, right now.
Just for
we got
clarification.
All right, well, ask the chairman to speak.
$805,000 in the general fund.
How much?
no.
$805,000.
We won't have, no, after this budget, we won't.
$675,000.
There you go, thank you.
Yes.
Well, that's not peanuts.
Well,
That's
it's
more than most people don't.
175,000 more
I don't
than
have that much
we need.
either.
All right, Dan, you have comments? You guys are quiet down here today.
This is my first year as working with the board on a budget. And when I ran for the town board, I ran on keeping our tax rates even. But after looking, like I said, long-term, looking at the cuts we did make, how revenue is generated in the town, and our inability to raise taxes as many think that we can on a whim, I also believe that an increase is appropriate, not the full amount again, to be fiscally responsible. For the long-term benefit of this town, I think a small increase would be appropriate at this time.
All right, any other comments?
Dan, when you ran, you did say you were gonna keep taxes
Yes.
constant.
Oh.
Now what you're saying, in 6 months later, or whatever, 7 months later, that we should raise it a little bit?
Can I answer?
Yes, you may.
You bet. And I learned a lot in that 6 months. I was wrong.
Mr. Buss?
Yeah, they
I'll
were
get you
talking
next, Gus.
about the carryover. It seems like we got a lot of money, but the people has got to remember that this town has got to operate on that until about the 1st of March or the middle of March, something like that.
Yep.
And you know, that ain't a lot of money to operate a town on.
It's been a long time that we've worked through that budget, and we knew that we needed to keep at least 500. Gus, back there?
Thank you, Gus Mancuso. First of all, I've talked to several of you offline and been at some of these meetings as well, and I think I hear a couple things. There's a balance of our viewpoints here tonight. I think terms like long-term vision and keeping the town fiscally responsible, I think is something that every single board member is doing. I think also this is an opportunity to provide some trust and some faith in our local officials. They are the ones that are struggling with making our town solvent financially as well as a good place to live. And I want to thank you on behalf of those people here as well, that we know that it's sometimes a very thankless job. And I have full confidence that you've been wrestling with this, working hard at it. And I think we just need to move on and continue to make our town strong, and not just come to these meetings necessarily and take a one point or a specific point of view, and be sure to take in the whole budget and the whole process. So thank you for your work as well.
All right, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak to it? Anybody else wish to speak to the budget? Anybody else wish to speak to the budget?
Arnie, could I ask,
Yes, Mr. Head?
yeah, what Kathy was saying about the levy limits and Jeannie, I guess, and the max? How many mills or whatever are we allowed to raise it legally now? If we chose to do that?
We have approximately just about 59,000 that we could still collect. So it would be another $12 per 100,000. Taking into
12 cents.
consideration for every 10,000, it's about $2, like you said, per 100,000. So we have close to 59,000 that is uncollected levy. Part of that can be put on next year's levy. Well,
In 2015.
For 2015, when we do the budget and stuff into the fall of 2015. Because we wouldn't use it this year, the state allows us to use a small portion of it and add it to our next levy, which is about 20,000. So we would lose approximately 39,000 worth of potential levy.
Go ahead.
So you
Go
guys
ahead.
just plan on taking that money and putting it in reserve? No,
We have no plan. It hasn't been, if the town officials or the town residents later tell us to raise that levy up to a higher amount, then the board would have to look, okay, now what are we gonna do with it? But we have no plan because we didn't budget for it. So likely it would go into reserves and then be used as something comes up. There's a lot of times things come up that are not budgeted for, similar to, we've kicked around and maybe there's a possibility of working towards a boundary agreement again. And if we start on that process again, because the communities are starting to talk together again, there'd be some costs involved in it. It's not budgeted for right now, so we're not even considering that. So, any other questions? One more round, and
Can we predicate what that extra money would be used for?
no.
We can do that at the
You
annual
can
meeting?
suggest it, but you can't. Any budget changes are just the dollar amount. It's the
Okay.
responsibility of the board to decide where those funds would go.
Okay, does the board have any preferences on what they might do with any windfall?
You'd have to ask them individually, I can't speak for them. Anything else? If not, we've had some very good comments. We'll call the motion to adjourn the public budget hearing, and then we'll move to the actual nuts and bolts. Is there a motion? Anywhere from the floor or the board?
I moved to
That's a board
adjourn the
motion.
meeting.
I'm sorry, that's a board motion, I forgot, Tom.
I'll make a motion.
Dan, second by,
I'll second.
and I did, but I was in an error again. I've only been on the seat here a little while. Motion by Dan, second by Kathy. Hearing any other discussion? All in favor of it, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm an aye. Any opposed? No one's opposed to that. All right, now we're going to move into the special town meeting portion of it, and I'll call that to order. At this point in time, we'll accept a motion by the electors to approve the minutes from the April 16th annual meeting and the August 13th, 2013 special town board minutes. Is there a motion from the floor to accept
I would
those?
so move.
Mr. Buss has moved to approve, and Mrs. Nystrom has seconded. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye, and you may vote. Aye. Any opposed?
Actually,
Do you
we
need a show of
we
hands?
need a show of hands.
Show of
So
hands.
Please hold your hands up until we can get a count.
You're gonna have to stand up.
Whoops, I'll count, I'll count.
Yeah, have a double count.
If you're all up, see, we're unanimous.
Yeah. Stand up if you're 20.
We should just have the opposed sign.
Yes.
I got 40.
Thank you.
39.
You may rest.
Now we're close.
comfortable, everyone in this room is except for.
Clerk will read the estimate tax information, including proposed tax town rate.
Okay, tax rate information.
What document are you using?
Right now I'm on this one. Well, yours is partial, halfway on there.
This one's,
Yep. Well, as we've discussed before already tonight, the 2012 payable and 2013 town tax rate was $2.86. The proposed rate for 2013 payable and 14 is $2.87. The state rate is staying the same at 17 cents. County has gone down 11 cents to 504. The school taxes has gone up 27 cents to $10.45. Mid-state down 4 cents to $1.73 for a gross rate of $20.26 per thousand. You'll notice that there's no number in the state credit. That has not been given to us yet. In the past, I went back and looked, 2008 through now, it's went from $1.45, $1.47, up as high as $1.57. So until we know that number, I don't have a final number for you. We should be seeing that shortly. And actually, that's about it for the tax rates.
All right, we'll move to item 4. The highway expenditure budget needs to be set, and that's something that we cannot exceed. I'm going to have Judy go over that for you a little bit and explain that to you. As you remember, we did have to call a special meeting this last fall to raise it up because we were going to spend more on the Town Line Road project than was initially expected.
Okay. And the one I'm looking at is the highway expenditure, the columns, gives you back to 2010. Highway expenditures, the town is required to stay within our estimated budgets anytime that we're going to spend over $5,000 per mile. We currently have roughly 100 miles of roads in the town. The highway expenditures per statutes includes all of the road maintenance amounts, all the items that are listed on the side there. The debt service, this is for 2014, that 217 is the amount that we borrowed on the one-year loan to pay for Town Line Road, which is one of the reasons why we've jumped up some from 2013 to 2014. We also did leave a little bit extra. We put a little bit extra in the road construction budget for next year due to the fact that Town Line is the only road that was done except for a couple of culverts. So next year we hope to get back on track and get some more of the other roads taken care of. When you approve the highway expenditures, the board always asks for 50,000 more than what we have, 100,000 more. We're not saying that we're going to spend that money. What we're saying is that should something happen, should a tornado come through here and our road crew is out for hours and days on overtime, which puts our budget over. By law, in order to pay those people, to pay the bills that we would need, if a road collapsed and we had to repair it that was outside of what we had planned on and what we had budgeted for, that we would have to call a special town meeting, which requires a 15-day publication, and then have a meeting like this and have the electors vote to let the town pay those bills. So in the case of an emergency, which is why we are asking to say, you know, approve it at $1 million or approve it at $1.1 million. from the 988. It's absolutely nothing that the town board has any intention of spending. This is another area where that contingency fund, our general fund, would come into play. It's in case something would happen. We wouldn't have to do the 15-day and have the whole special town meeting.
I move that the total amount budgeted for 2014 highway expenditures be $988,095.
We have a motion by Shirley that it remains as posted, $988,095. That's been seconded by Mr. Buss. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I will be voting opposed to that because it doesn't leave any contingency for the emergency situation that Judy described. And in previous years, it has always been greater than the amount than what we had budgeted for.
Any other discussion, Bill?
Yes. I disagree with that. I think this is a good group right here today. They're concerned about it. I think if a situation come up, this same group would be here and probably give it to the town. And I think it's proper under 82 that you have to have a resolution to increase it. This is a motion, and this is what it states on here, that we're going to have a motion on the highway expenditures as presented by this town. If you want to increase it $500 or $5,000, I say you have to have a resolution, and why I say that is because that's in the town of Grant, Portage County. They even asked for how we do this, I understand, and through email they did it. And then there was a email sent from Wisconsin Towns Association, Rick Stolleman, in which he said you have to have a resolution to increase it.
Well, it's kind of funny that that information never gets to the town chair, and I'm surprised that you have that information.
I'm surprised you want to
haven't
get
shared it.
personal about it. I still have the floor.
I say that you don't have the floor because you stopped speaking and then I spoke, Mr. So, irregardless of that, you can understand that the board will have some give and take. We don't always agree on everything we do, but we do agree on this budget. So the motion is in front of you, and if there's any other discussion on whether the rate should be $988,095 or more than that, I'm going to ask for a call for a vote here momentarily. So those in favor of the highway budget remaining as posted, $988,095 as is, please raise your hand and acknowledge that as yes.
Keep your hand up, please.
Raise them high.
Hi.
2.
Not two hands either.
7, 18, 16, 16.
Those opposed, now raise your hand. All right, the motion has not passed. Is there another motion to come forward? Mr. Head?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to increase the 2014 highway expenditures to $1,050,000, which is an increase of about $62,000 over the budgeted amount.
Is there a second to that motion to raise it to $1,050,000?
I'll second.
And a second by Justice. Discussion. Yes, Mr. Head.
I probably should have asked this earlier, but so how does this, where does this money come from? How does it get paid? How does, or what doesn't get paid? What?
All right, the long and short of it is the town could spend up to $1,050,000 if this motion passes. We would either have to borrow for those funds, or we'd have to pull it from reserves if we had to do it, or another line item that may be sitting there as a cash cow, which there are a lot of, right? But it's surprising, some years, things we don't spend as much on. We may have 72-degree days all winter, right? So, in the house, that is probably, right? So what I'm saying is we're not, this is not saying that we're going to spend it, but it gives the town the authority to spend up to that much if it has to. You would have to find the funds through a board action. Any other questions? Hearing none, call for the motion to accept the highway expenditure limit of $1,050,000. Signify by saying aye, raise your hand. Those opposed, raise your hand.
$17.
17, 25 to 17, motion is carried. The highway expenditure budget will be $1,050,000. And again, that's not spent. All right, we'll move to item 5 now. That's a motion from the electors to set the town tax rate or dollar amount. The proposed tax rate again is $2.87 per thousand of excess value. The proposed tax dollar limit is $1,335,083. Is there a motion?
I motion to make the tax rate $2.87 per thousand.
The motion has been made by Shirley,
I second.
and there's a seconded,
Pardon.
Fred. I'm sorry, Fred.
Okay.
The motion has been made and seconded. Discussion now. Yes? Shirley?
Yeah, anyways, so are those one and the same? Or why is it
Yeah.
stated as or?
Because that's what it equals.
Because the levy can be set by the town electors at either the mill rate
Or,
at a dollar amount. You could either say $2.87, or you can say $2.92, or $2.62, or you can say 2 million, or you could say 1 million. It can be set either way.
and you
Not to
couldn't,
exceed the allowable amount.
yeah, you
Correct.
couldn't, let me just explain one thing and I'll let you talk, Bill. You couldn't raise it higher than 59,000 over the 335, excuse me. Go ahead, Bill.
The reason the people are here tonight is because of the notice that was put in the newspaper. Item number 3 is adopt a 2013 town levy. That's what the statutes say. That's what you do here is the town levy. We figure once that has been changed, then we figure out what the rate is. I mean, you're here for the notice, statutory notice.
Exactly. All right, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on Fred Lumby? Motion and a second to leave the town tax rate at $2.87 per thousand. Is any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye and raise your hand. Those opposed, raise your hand.
Should have
27 to 14, the levy is set at $2.87 per thousand. Thank you.
I'm good.
Thank you. It was a hard budget, and we do appreciate everybody working with us.
We appreciate your work.
Thank you. All right, a couple other items that we have to do. Annually, we need a motion from the electors to pay the hourly rate to be paid for town employees who are also elected town officials, so that is in the event that we would be required due to some massive event, such as a catastrophic event, if we would need to get on the end loaders, and you don't want to see me on an end loader, I can tell you. But we could work for the town, but the rate has to be set by you folks. I think the current rate is,
$14.69.
current rate that we have in there is $14.69 per hour. If that's sufficient, need a motion to leave it the same, or think we need a penny raise, let us know.
I'll make a motion. Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to leave it as it is, $14.69.
Motion by Greenie, seconded by Mr. Heiser, I think I caught first. Is there any further discussion to it? Hearing none, all in favor of leaving the town employee to work at a hourly rate of $14.69, signify by raising your hand as on aye.
Won't we abstain, since it's about us?
Oh,
I'm abstaining because it's about us.
oh, that's true.
I'm too.
What's this deal?
I recuse.
Those opposed? Probably not very many opposed. Nope, none opposed, look at that. All right.
There we go.
Hey, unanimous.
We're getting better.
All right, the item 7 is actually something we don't need to do. We've taken upon ourselves to present this at the annual town meetings, and the reason it's done that way every other year is to keep supervisors pay the same, so we don't have one supervisor working at a $46 per diem and the other one's working at $42, depending on when you were elected. So we do it every other year, and that way it takes place, and the rate is equal to each supervisor then. So I think we'll just, do we need a motion to table it? No?
No, we shouldn't have to.
Do we vote?
May I just make a comment?
You may.
It's, the public notice says, if an elector came here today to change the salary of the town board members, they could make that motion, and we would explain to them what happened. But I think it's there, if you don't get no motion, then it stays the same. Because it was on the notice that you can come here and do that.
Let me point in that you're correct. I'll agree with you. So if there is no motion to take up supervisor salaries, then we'll leave it the same. Do I hear any motions? Do I hear any motions? No, there is no motion, so it remains the same. Thank you. I will announce that the annual 2014 annual town meeting, which is going to be held on the third Tuesday of April, that meeting will be April 15, 2014. Please mark your calendars.
Can we change that to 6 o'clock, or aren't we allowed to?
We'll have to check and see.
An annual town meeting has to be held on the third Tuesday of April, which is what we do.
Yeah.
Or if set at a prior annual meeting, which would have been the April before, within 10 days of the third Tuesday. There's nothing in the statutes that says what time we have to have
I
it.
think the board can set the time.
I can check with Dan.
All right,
Motion to adjourn.
there you go, Mr. Buss, thank you. Motion by Mr. Buss to adjourn, is there a second?
I second.
Seconded by Mr. Elf. And all those that are in favor of adjourning, please raise your hands. Unanimous.
Okay.
All right, I want to personally thank everybody for taking your time tonight, and again, I want to thank my fellow board members and staff that put a lot of time into this budget.